Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how are you today? Well, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter yet, please do so. The information is always in the description box below, so you can get a hold of me and Trish and we'll get you set up, okay? Also, if you would like to contribute anything to our newsletter, like prepping tips and information and recipes and stuff like that, email us, okay? And we'll put it in the newsletter. So, grab your coffee, or I'm having tea today. This is my favorite tea. It's by Bigelow, and it's called Perfectly Mint. Just a little bit of honey. So, this article was sent to me, okay? And this is going to apply to a lot of us, okay? That have like Android phones, okay, even flip phones, all right, because I know a lot of you say, well, I don't have an Android phone, I still have a flip phone, stuff like that. Okay, well, those 3G and 4G networks, they're no longer going to be working, okay, and this is why, okay. When it comes to mobile phone technology, 5G is the biggest thing. Apple promoted 5G connectivity last year when introducing the iPhone 12. Even though most people won't get the speeds that Apple touted, 5G is moving forward, with installations covering more and more areas as mobile phone carriers plan for the future. At the same time, carriers are shutting down older 3G networks. As a result of this, people with older phones or basic feature phones will no longer be able to use them, okay? But killing off these slower networks will affect much more than just the phones. Millions of cars have 3G systems, as do many alarms, security cameras, and other devices. So, phone companies have to keep up with the latest technology, and they don't want to maintain older technologies that aren't used much. So they cost money to maintain and use the space that can be better utilized for newer hardware, removing older mass make space for 5G equipment, and simplifies network management, and some 3G spectrum can be used for 4G data. However, it can't be used for 5G. So carriers in many countries have announced that they're shutting down the 3G networks as well as 2G, if they're still in use, sometime next year. In the US, Verizon is flipping the switch on December 31st, 2022. AT&T is turning their network off February 2022. T-Mobile has several dates in 2022 for the various networks they manage. T-Mobile runs UMTS, CDMA 3G networks. In the UK, BT just announced that EE, the mobile phone company they own, will turn off 3G by 2023. And other carriers have made it clear that they'll be shutting down their 3G networks around the same time. BT says that 3G usage has been in steady decline, now representing less than 2% of data traffic over the EE network, but it's not clear how many devices use 3G. Since faster 4G devices use more data, and since there are many 3G devices that use very little data, cutting off 1/50th of the data still translates to millions of devices. Now, interestingly, the announcement in the UK came just days before considering buying like cheaper phones, pay-as-you-go with the SIM cards, okay, to keep, like if you keep it in the car in case of emergencies. Most of these phones are 2G or 3G devices. So pretty much all feature phones will lose network access very soon. Now, there are some 4G feature phones, and while this type of phone isn't very expensive, the newer 4G models will cost substantially more than the previous version. As far as iPhones are considered, you probably won't have to worry. Like the iPhone 5 released in 2013 was the first iPhone with 4G LTE. And it's likely that there are many older iPhones that won't support the 3G, such as like the original iPhone 3G and the that are still in use. And the same is true for like iPad, like the iPad 2, which was released in 2012. The first cellular iPad with 4G. The older models are unlikely to be used widely. But many other devices will be affected, okay? Home alarms often use 3G connectivity, either as their only way of alerting alarm companies or as a fallback if Wi-Fi is unavailable. So if you have this, like I do, I don't know. My security alarm here is newer than 6 months. So I'm going to have to call FrontPoint because that's who my security system is through. And I'm going to have to ask them, is it 3G, 4G, or what? Because it's also Wi-Fi. So, because it's not plugged into a phone jack, okay? But I can also access it through my cell phone. Okay? So, these are things that you're going to have to consider if you have an alarm system in your home, all right? If it's not plugged into a wall jack, all right? Because mine's not. So, in the US, there are millions of alarms that will lose connectivity. And these are the things that we really have to watch out for because I know a lot of you guys have these alarm systems, okay? However, not all alarm systems will be affected. Like Ring, okay? They were confirmed that their base stations use 4G for the cell phone access. They said that they planned ahead, being aware that the 3G shutdown was imminent, okay? Many cars have 3G technology for their navigation systems and will lose this feature. Some medical tracking devices will be affected as well, okay? So older mobile personal emergency response system devices used by elderly people use 3G will need to be replaced. There are also, so, if, you are taking care of your parents, your grandparents, things like this, please be on alert with this, okay? Speak to their doctors. Get to know what's really going on here, okay? So, there are also sensors and standalone security cameras that use 3G, notably in industry, but 4G requires larger hardware and uses more power, making the changeover complicated. All right. Now, interestingly, the UK seems likely to maintain a 2G network because there are mainly devices, including smart electric meters that cost billions of pounds to install. That use older technology, and the EU-wide e-call emergency system in cars also uses 2G and 3G networks, and for this reason, 2G will have to be maintained. Now, finally, like if you have a Kindle, okay, like the ebook readers with cellular access, that is not one of the latest models. You will lose access, okay? Which, if you paid up front for it when you bought the device, Kindles, unlike, say, smartphones, okay, can last a long time, and millions of users will lose this functionality. Only 2 Kindle models, the current Paperwhite 4th generation released in 2018, and Oasis 3rd generation released in mid-2019, offer 4G access. You still have a year or two before the 3G shutdown. And I would expect that Amazon to offer owners a discount on newer models. It's natural for technology to move forward, but you need to be aware of these things. And if you have these older devices, you're not going to be able to use them. Okay, so these are just, things that you should be aware of. All right, so so much going on, so much. It's like if you don't keep up on these things, it's like forget it. You know what I mean? Okay, so then I wanted to talk about these two things, okay? I'm just going to give you like a really quick rundown on these two articles that I found, all right? And then you can read the rest because, I always leave references for you guys, okay? And it has to do with fertilizer. Now you're probably going to be like, really, fertilizer? Yeah. Yeah. So engineered food scarcity is a weapon that is designed to achieve depopulation across the globe by creating famine, starvation, and civil unrest, okay? Now, the quickest way to achieve global famine is to cut off the fertilizer supply. No fertilizer equals no food, okay? And the quickest way to shut down fertilizer production is to choke off fossil fuels. Now, you can't turn solar energy directly into fertilizer. There's no direct conversion. Natural gas and other fossil fuels, on the other hand, are directly translated into fertilizer through a very efficient method that simply can't be matched by green energy. It's called Haber, Haber process. Much of the production of fertilizer in the world centers around this chemical process, the Haber process, which was created in 1908, which is arguably the single most important chemical reaction to sustain humanity at current population levels. In effect, this transforms air into fertilizer by combing it with hydrogen from fossil fuels or natural gas. And this reaction takes place at a temperature of 450 degrees Celsius and at 200 atmospheres of pressure, meaning it requires heavy-duty equipment and energy inputs in order to succeed. About 3.8 billion people depend on this process to feed themselves. Without this process, the present-day human population would be impossible to sustain. Thus, killing off about half the world's population merely requires restricting the fossil fuels that provide the hydrocarbons used in the Haber process. So, importantly, when coal, oil, and other fossil fuels are squeezed by scientifically ignorant globalists who claim to be working towards a green future, it causes shortages and price inflation across all fossil fuels, including the natural gas used in fertilizer production. In fact, the current energy shortages already plaguing this planet as we head into winter for the Northern Hemisphere, with blackouts now anticipated across North America, Ukraine, Western Europe, China, India, Middle Eastern nations, are entirely as a result of truly suicidal globalists or leaders shutting down fossil fuel infrastructure in the name of green energy. While green energy can certainly contribute to the power grid when it comes to raw consuming of electricity, it cannot replace the Haber process for producing fertilizer. Thus, when the infrastructure for fossil fuels is shuttered, fertilizer production ceases. It ceases. So, I know. And then we know that the globalist genocide war against humanity is multi-vectored assault on every system that sustains human life. Biology, energy, economics, freedom, self-ownership of your body, so on. Now we have new information that reveals the food scarcity attack vector is targeting the fertilizer supply chain in order to unleash massive crop failures for 2022. An article in Free West Media sounds the alarm on this situation. The article documents an astonishing number of freight train accidents involving fertilizer carrying trains. Around the world, everything from factories have been destroyed in explosions to trains loaded with fertilizers derailed. In some cases, sabotage is suspected. An example of devastating accidents occurred in the U.S. state of Iowa on May 16th, earlier this year. A freight train transporting fertilizer is no less than 47 wagons then derailed, and several of the wagons also started to burn. Less than a day before, another freight train with 28 carriages derailed in Minnesota. It carried, among other things, hydrochloric acid, which is an important ingredient in fertilizer. These are just two of the unusually high number of accidents that affected manufacturers and transports of fertilizer in the past year. An American train driver with over 30 years of experience has commented that we have more derailments with fertilizer trains this year than during my entire professional time. To understand where food comes from, you need to know about CF Industries. With over 3,000 employees and over $4 billion in annual revenue, they have dozens of distribution terminals in North America, including Canada, and 2 locations in the UK. But they have been plagued by manufacturing plant shutdowns, as Free West Media explains here. In Louisiana is CF Industries, largest ammonia factory in the world, but it was closed down for safety reasons the day before Hurricane Ida struck, but could not resume production after it had passed due to the power outage. Fertilizer factories have recently also begun to shut down their operations due to high costs of natural gas, which is also in production. A couple of examples are 2 factories in the UK, one in Billingham and one in Cheshire, which closed in mid-September. The 2 plants account for no less than around 45% of domestic demand. Industry insiders have pointed out how they found it strange that these 2 were owned by CF Industries. Instead of compensating for delays due to the hurricane, CF chose to close 2 more factories 2 weeks later. The same thing has happened in many European countries with too high natural gas prices. Austrian fertilizer production Borealis AG and German SKW Piestritz, which is Germany's largest producer of ammonia, have scaled down production by 20%. The German company said in a statement that the level has now been reached, no longer enables economically sound production. So we have to take this step. It is no longer economically feasible to manufacture fertilizer due to high energy costs. Things that make you go, isn't it? All right, guys. The links will be in the description box below so you can have your references, okay? So I love you. I'll see you in the next one. You stay safe. You stay positive. You keep prepping. And as always, fear less. Ciao.